Money. The game everyone plays, but few win. Extracting the knowledge from the top 1%. And teaching you the ever-changing rules of play. It's time to level up and take control of the money game.
Let's talk money.
Big money. Yes!
Welcome back to the Money Game. We're stoked. We have an awesome guest. I'm super excited for this guy. We have Chris Prefontaine. Did I say that right?
You said it perfect.
I know you introduce yourself a lot as Chris Pre, so I thought about doing that. It sounded a little easier, but I figured I'd give it a shot.
Good job.
Chris is a creative finance expert, 4-time best-selling author. His newest book, Sell with Authority. And then we've got here, if you're watching the video, we have his book. I actually read all of your books last week. So I'm super stoked to dive into some stuff because I learned a ton. I think right now, more than ever, is a great time to have you on, just with everything that's going on in the market. But how you doing today, Chris?
I am doing awesome. Thanks. And it's a pleasure to be on.
Love it. Well, I want to jump right in. Obviously, I think a lot of people right now with everything going on in the market, the interest rates are going crazy, stocks are dropping. A lot of people's normal plans for investing, for retirement, for flow, for finances is kind of dipping. But after reading your book, I know you've been in real estate for 31 years. You've been through some market cycles. I actually want to talk a little bit about some of your mindset stuff from your story I know you start one of your books off talking about how you went through the 2008 with a little bit of a different strategy and kind of lost some stuff and then just rebuilt all of this. So for you having some experience going through this, what are you seeing right now? And what are some things that people need to do to stay locked in?
Well, first of all, I'll mention what I'm seeing, but I want to just caution everybody to not listen to the so-called experts because the billionaires don't know. And don't let them tell you they do. They don't. What you want to get good at, and then I'll tell you what I'm seeing. What you want to get good at is operating in any market. That's the deal. There's one constant in real estate, right, Ty? It's constantly changing, period. End of story. Yeah. So get really good, and not just good, but get comfortable with the fact that it is going to constantly change. It's not a bad thing. I'll tell you what I'm seeing. I'll give it just a couple of quick stats, and we can go back to it if you want. In the last 50 years, this is only the third time that we've hit an affordability problem. Supply and demand, yeah, but affordability in addition to that. So if the affordability is already a problem, like hundreds of thousands of buyers just got flushed out of the conventional market, literally, sadly, like boom, done. They thought they could buy 6 months ago, now they can't. If we know that's already a problem and we look at the 50-year interest rate, the 50-year interest rate average is 7.7. We're not even there yet, and it's already a headache, a major problem. So that screams that creative real estate is just in high demand because if that's going on the other side, the sellers can't sell like they were. So this has never happened. Well, it's the third time it's happened. So this has almost never happened. So historically, this is going to create fortunes. That's what happens. I'll also say that just not too many months ago, fractured closings that die at the closing table, were like in the teens. They're approaching 22% now. I think August, the Wall Street Journal reported 20%. That's crazy. So 20% of deals, talk about buyers and sellers being bummed out. So now creative real estate has never been in such high demand. In 31 years, I haven't seen it. So yes, I went through some serious headaches in 08, and you couldn't have convinced me it was good. Now in hindsight, super glad because here we are. And we've gone through COVID, we've gone through craziness and just thrived.
I love it. I love what you said too. I know in your book you say we want to teach you to build recession-proof muscles to kind of just be able to adapt, and you're big on that. As you've gone through so many cycles, you also talk a lot about having a coach who's been through stuff, who's seen different things, who's adapted along the way, and is still actively doing deals. I think that's what's cool about you and your team. I know just coming back on that, I think a lot of people, obviously strategies change, all these things change, but I think sometimes the fear, the doubt when stuff hits the fan that hard for you, as you've made it through different cycles and you've still invested, you even changed your strategy from, I know you were originally doing more traditional, conventional loans, holding properties, looking for appreciation, and now all creative finance. What was your mentality? How are you able to develop the discipline to stay in the game and then just win through those moments?
Well, I don't act like in any shape, form, or fashion that was easy and it wasn't painful, because it was ridiculously painful, financially and mentally. So we'll talk about that. One is my wife. We've been married 36 years, and for her to put up with that, let's be serious. Like there's a lot that has to go into that for a support standpoint and family. As far as always winning, I mean, it's just for context for people, you read the book, and that's why you have such cool questions, but not everybody did, and we'll make sure they get it for free, like when Zach was on. But the fact is that coming out of that took 4 years for me, to dig out, not just financially, but more so mentally. And when I say dig out, so everybody has some context. I'm talking millions in the hole. My credit went from perfect to in the toilet. I went from a $2.5 million home, which I heard recently was sold for like $6 million, to a 900 square foot apartment for $900 a month. That's where we lived for 6 years. So that was an enlightening and humbling experience. And that's what enabled us to rebuild, though, my wife and I, and now the company. So that was a long answer. Do you want to hit the mental piece, or do you want to come back to that, or it's up to you?
No, yeah, I think that's fascinating, because obviously $2.5 million now sold for $6 million. Like you were doing some really cool stuff. You were living an awesome lifestyle. You talk about that. That's humbling. I think a lot of people are not prepared for that, or they're over leveraged or whatever. And I think especially now more than ever with social media, it's like, how do I look? How am I perceived? And that's such a big part of their money game or their strategy. Yeah. For you, when you went through that, what are some of the things you just, obviously it's humbling experience. What are the conversations you and your wife are having to be able to like lock in and just say, hey, we can make it through this?
Well, she was, okay, two things. Before we did that, people had said to me, my father was one of them, but a couple private lenders, mentors that I saw as mentors, they were really successful in other niches like lumber supply company. He's in the book. They said, look, you should cut your overhead. This was before things got bad. Mm-hmm. And my ego said, no, I can get through it. I can muscle my way through it. And we couldn't. And so my wife's the one that said, we're going to move over to this apartment. And I said, okay, I'll do it for 6 months. 6 months, my ego. We stayed there 6 years. So the conversations weren't easy, but I knew that at some point it had to happen. And then it wasn't even mental, right? It's almost like when my son had his accident, you get through and you don't know how you get through it. Yeah. So yeah, it was just, you're in a zone. You got to do what you got to do to move into that apartment from having outbuildings and property stuff on my property. It was crazy.
And then on the scale back up, right? Like obviously you're in an apartment. Obviously you've seen what it is before. How did you kind of then compartmentalize or strategize? Hey, we're in this, we're moving the needle, we're moving the needle, we're moving the needle. When do you kind of give yourself the leash to, hey, we can go move into this house. We can lever down. Yeah. Here was the difference in that growth that we took, Ty, then back early teens, was I didn't do anything unless it was cash or ridiculously low LTV, like 10%. Got it. To get something done. And to this day, don't do it. So when I go to sleep at night, it's a much different experience than knowing that this steamroller is behind you, you know? Yeah. And that's really what it felt like. So, and then outside of the family and Kim and I, then what it became, there's some light bulb moments. I only wrote about one of them in the book, that the guy owned the lumber company. I even gave his name, Clay. He's the one that said to me, look, Chris, you didn't take down the market. Okay. The market is the market. You blaming yourself. It's like too late in hindsight, but he said that. And he said, you just get with everyone and you be honest with them. You're going to work your tail off and you're going to make it right. And that's what I did. With the exception of one person, everybody said, I trust you, go for it. So I had their support. And so that was important. Then the second piece was about 3 years after, it took me 4, about 3 years after, I got with a gentleman who's still in the business. He's in his late 70s. And he said, you think that was tough? Like he laughed at me, literally laughed at me. I flew to his office for advice. He said, let me tell you what I went through. And he began to list the things that made my things look like a pimple. And so my point of that is this. When you're going through anything, there's someone that did it and came out really well and probably had it really worse than you did. You got to seek them out. It took me too long to seek them out. I wish I did it right away, like in the first 6 months, if I could control that. So seek them out and get their advice, and you'll be fine. It's okay. Like life keeps changing. Yeah. And obviously you talk a lot about mentors. I've looked into your guys' platform, and you have your own course where you guys teach the stuff that we're definitely going to dive into in the strategy, because I think it's super sexy. I think it's crazy important right now in the market that we're going into, and just especially for my generation, the kind of this age of the entrepreneur where people don't have the credit, don't have, the cash to play. They think they have to be part of an investment fund or whatever. I love the strategy, but As you talk about finding the right mentors and coaches, you said some of them, like you mentioned one in your book, how do you go vet who is helping you build back or develop your systems? Who do you go to for advice? How are you finding those people?
This is a big one. Really good question. Here's why I think it's a really good question. There's plenty of people, without using names, that have built businesses and destroyed their family. There just is.
Yeah.
And whether it's their wife or their kid, I know people have lost marriage. I know people have the children have committed suicide. This goes on because they block out the world. So in my opinion, and I might step on toes with this, I'm talking about morals, values, weight. I'm sorry, like how you take care of yourself matters.
Yeah.
Like, so everything, if you can find someone that you can align with on all those fronts and they had success and they're still doing it, great. You got a match there that if you put the blinders on and lock arms with them, you cannot lose. So it's that person, but then it's you putting the blinders on for at least 3 years. Brian Tracy on my show said 7. So whatever 3 to 7 years, putting the blinders on, not getting distracted, not getting the shiny object syndrome, you'll have a great experience. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I love that. And I think that's something for me that I'm recently married 2 years, have a daughter, and building a business,
Awesome.
building, a real estate portfolio. It's become so much more apparent to me. I think I didn't think about it as much when I was single. Obviously I didn't have all these, my time. I was just,
Right.
I could go do and meet and do whatever, but now I have a wife, she has needs and my daughter has needs. And I love that you said
Things change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said, find somebody who has the family, who has the health, who has all these things, and then has still been successful. Because it's so easy to find somebody who just, like, even if I about a Gary Vee, right? Or, a Jeff Bit, hey, just grind. Well, I don't want to work, 23 hours a day and have 1 hour free for my family. That's not the life. I don't care.
You're going to suffer somewhere. Your health or something's going to suffer.
Yeah. So I love that you said that. For you, what are some of the mentors or the lessons that you learned from mentors as you're coming in? Because obviously you starting conventional real estate. How did you then transition or find the right people and study material to then go learn this crazy, super ingenuitive, creative finance?
Well, for me, after the crash, it was just a hodgepodge of everyone because I don't know if you read the recent book that Anderson Cooper did about his family, the Vanderbilts. That literally, if I look out this window, Ty, the cliff walk is there and all the mansions are there. So I didn't pick it up because of any love for him or dislike for him either way. I just picked it up because of the Vanderbilt mansion. I go, oh, that's cool. I'll get some history.
Yeah.
But he talks about in that book, in the 1600s, his family was buying property in New York City before banks existed. So to your mentoring question and piecing all this together, this stuff's been out there.
Yeah.
It's just that I feel in the industry, no one's taken it and went, hey, here's how it all fits together better. More importantly, here's how you can go run with it. And we got you. We'll be there to support you. I just don't think it's ever existed at the right level in the education space in real estate, but other industries too. There's a lot of great marketers. They really are. But frankly, they don't care. Right after that sale's done, they could care less. They'll tell me, I don't care. I'm not in coaching, Chris. So we commit on there and say, we got you. We're going to run with you. So I can't tell you it was one thing. It was just a hodgepodge of things. And I said, this fits what I need to do. I cannot sign personally anymore in a bank. I can't get a bank loan because my credit sucks and I don't have any cash. So that stuff worked for me. And then we trademarked the 3 paydays and we built from there. But that's how it started. It was out of a need.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk about the 3 paydays. As I was going through the book, I've obviously heard of Sub2, heard of some owner financing stuff. The way that you guys have created 3 paydays, and I'm going through the book, it's so easy to process for somebody. But I know for my listeners, right, average audience, I think most people listening right now, right, you think of buying a home, 2 years of income in a similar space with the right credit, the 20% down payment or whatever. This system here is allowing people that you guys are teaching, allowing people to buy homes or properties and move deals with no credit, none of their own money or little of their own money, and as well, like no bank loans. Can you walk us through?
Right.
Obviously, I know you guys said now sandwich leases and then like owner financing Sub2 is kind of your guys' specific trifold that you guys are targeting right now. What does one of these deals look like?
Well, do you want me to just pick one out of my
Yeah,
I got
I'd love to
a bunch in my head. Want me to pick one? Okay. So let me let's do a pretty conventional one. So this is the deal that Zach worked on as well. So I'll use this one. So oceanfront home. I'm saying some of these because some people think already, well, you can't do that. How are you going to do that on oceanfront home? Why would a seller do that? Why? How do you convince them? So oceanfront home. Now get this, bunch of punchlines here. She was a realtor. She owned the home. She was debt free. It's overlooking. It's at Cape Cod, like a resort area, overlooking the bluff. Beautiful. What the reason she was selling it, Ty, and came to us is exactly where we come into people's lives, which is either to solve a problem or to accomplish a goal that they can't in the conventional world. Mm-hmm. Hers wasn't a problem. She was debt free, $1 million house. Her goal that she couldn't accomplish in the conventional market was she wanted to stay there a little bit. Her mom was sick and she didn't want to ruffle her. Like there were just things, if you just listen, you can solve. Yeah. So how we structured it is, unlike most deals where we have no money down, we did $8,000 down on this. We broke the rule, but $8,000 on $1 million home. I think it was $945. And Zach negotiated this because I wouldn't have the patience with this woman. That's not a whole story. So $945 purchase, $8,000 down, principal only payments. Here's how we do it: $2,500 a month, principal only. So $30,000 a year coming down off of principal. That's a nice recession hedge right there. Yeah. That's how we do 98% of our owner financing deals, principal only. And again, if people just get their arms wrapped around that one piece, that's what makes payday 3. And I know we'll talk about the paydays. It makes payday 3 huge. So now she's in the home. Unlike our normal exit where we want to put a rent to own buyer in there, she want to hang out a little bit. So we let her stay in the home. Now this is not conventional owner financing, so I don't want to get too deep, but we let her stay in the home and it was rent free. But every month she stayed in the home, we got the $2,500 off of principal, even though we weren't paying it off her note. Yeah. She was the bank, and she paid the taxes and maintained the home while she was in the home. Jeez. So one would say, well, why did she do it? She could have just done that. No, she wanted the liability and the burden off of her, and she wanted the flexibility to say, all right, my mom and I found a place, we're gone. Yeah. And we gave her that flexibility. And then when she was gone, we turned it around and did a rent to own, which we always do. And that is a buyer that needs time to get a mortgage because of either credit or what you said, seasoning, 2 years of tax returns, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so that begs most audiences would go, if a buyer can afford $1 million home, why can't they go get a loan? Because of what you said. Some, if they went to their new business, their own business, they need 2 years now. They get the cash, they get the credit, but they need 2 years of seasoning with the bank. That's a perfect buyer for a high-end home, and that's who we deal with. That deal I just talked to you about is a couple $100,000 profit in just under 3 years. You know, that type
and $8,000 down.
Yeah, $8,000. That's again, we broke the mold, but we had to give the lady something. We paid her transfer tax too, so let's call it 10 or 11.
Holy cow! Okay, so I think a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people thinking about this. Okay, how can I do one of these deals? I want to break some stuff down. So you talk about obviously one of the huge things, you know, the principal only payments, where right now, especially with how crazy the interest rates are right now, there's so many more people and you talked about this already, right? We're already seeing this, people who could have just flash sold their home for $20,000 over, asking no inspections, no anything 6, 7, 8 months ago, are now having difficulty selling. They're lowering their prices. And this is where in these times, I think this skill set you guys are teaching becomes so valuable. I've seen a lot of realtors who started up right in the middle of 2.5 interest rates and the markets just rip into the moon. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, wait, it just doesn't work anymore. But you guys are saying, I love that you're the quote, that just the ability to have a recession-proof business, to flex those muscles. How are you guys, stipulating with these people? You go find the buyer. How are you finding the sellers? What are you guys doing to generate those leads?
A couple of different ways. When someone's brand new and is limited time, all they do is they plug into our resource. The short answer is we give all the resources, but one is a service that spits out for sale by owners, for rent by owners, in what we call expired listings. The realtors couldn't sell. Even in a hot market, there's expireds. They're just way up right now. Those 3 lead sources. And then we have a virtual assistant. The student can call, but we teach them to get a virtual assistant to do that initial call. Get the people that have kind of raised their hand. Yep, I'm sort of interested in what you're saying on terms and creative real estate. Have someone call me. And then we or the student calls. That's the main way, Ty. But I like going deeper. Like if someone says, hey, Chris, I'm in, I don't know, pick a market, St. Louis, and I'm doing those 3 lead sources, but I need more deals, or I'm not getting enough leads, or my goals are bigger. Okay, we do those 3, but we also will buy lists. And one list might be free and clear owners. 33% roughly of the properties in the United States are free and clear. Well, that's a really cool pond to fish in. That's how I found my building. And these are people that are savvy. They just can't accomplish their goal necessarily in the conventional market and sell right away. They don't want to sell right away. So that's a list. There's all kinds of lists. Another great one is from 2015 to 19, you buy that list and you stipulate low equity. So here are people that bought before COVID. They have low equity. Some of them are in trouble now because of COVID or the interest rates changing, whatever. And so that's a great list. There's a bunch of niched lists that we can go after.
And then on the flip side with the buyers, I think even now, especially with kind of the craze and, as a business owner myself, and I've gone and bought my own home and I've done some multifamily stuff, you have to be really, really aware of how to structure. Kind of like you're saying, seasoning. If you're 1099 or self-employed and you don't have everything dialed up, you can have all the income in the world, but if it doesn't show right on paper to a bank, you still can't get a home. Are those type of people kind of the ideal when you're going and assigning a buyer?
They are. So because there's 2 types of buyers, right? One, my credit got beat up, Chris, and I'm not a lifelong credit problem. It's because of this, like COVID or divorce or death. And we got to help them enhance their credit 6 to 24 months. If, on the other hand, right now, post-COVID, I don't know if you read Michael Dell's new book, really cool book, but he used some crazy number, like 200,000% increase in entrepreneurship, people leaving their W-2 and going to start their own business. The heck with a job, I'm going to do my own business. So many of those were in the corporate world, 6, 7-figure earners. This is who we're attracting, by the way, as students too. But on the buyer side, so many of those didn't realize, I get great income, I got a 401k, I walked away with all this money, I'm just going to go buy a house and start my own business. And they get very disheartened when the bank goes, no, thank you, 2 years. Let me see what you do for 2 years. I don't care how much you have in the bank. You need to prove your income. They come to us. They are great buyers. They're already responsible. They already have good credit. They have cash down, which is payday 1 for us. They just need time. Yes, those are great buyers, and they're great buyers for the higher end. And then coincidentally, that's who's flocking to us as students too, as I mentioned, because they want a better way.
I love it. And so I think there's a lot of people too. I'm sure high-level corporate people leaving. Is this program, is this tactic, do you feel like it's a good strategy for somebody who's, kind of middle America making $50,000-$60,000 a year, like even a teacher or a coach where they have summers available to go execute on something like this? Is that somebody that you feel is a good associate for a program like this to go be playing in this game?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 examples. I like real examples. So Russ is in our community. If you haven't met him, you will. And he was a teacher and a basketball coach for 23 years, I think it was. It's up there. I might be off a year or 2. He just escaped his job this year, and he's a full-time coach with us. This is someone that had no real estate experience whatsoever. Did his first few deals, 6 figures each, and now coaches students. Great place for him. The only caveat I'll say is this, Ty. If someone's used to earning, let's just use 50 grand. I think you said 56 grand. If they're used to earning that for the last, let's pick a number, 15 years.
Yeah.
All I say is, look, please give yourself time. Your mentality is 50 grand a year. It's a different person to go earn $1 million. It's not difficult. You can do it, but give yourself time. It took you 15 years to get to 56 grand a year. We would teach you, but it's going to take some tweaking. That's why, even though we teach the same course over and over again, it takes some people 30 days and some people 365. We all have baggage. We all have mental stuff. We all have skill sets or lack of. Be aware of that. That's all. Set your expectations properly. This is not an overnight thing, but I promise you, once you get there and you learn the skill sets and the mental mindset to get to $1 million, you don't lose it. You stack upon it and away you go. That makes sense?
No, absolutely. I think I see that all the time training sales reps. I think I talk about all the time, the difference between a 50, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 sales rep. It's not a ton of skill per se. It's not that they have way more content. It's really just transforming their mind to unlock hey, I'm good enough. I deserve to go do this. But depending on their background, who they are, or whatever, I love that you said baggage, just whatever's gotten them to that point in life. Sometimes it can be shed instantaneously and sometimes it takes a while. Do you think that's kind of
and I know this will sound, again, I'll use the word foo-foo on this one, but we at our last event, Ty, we had a speaker, and all the speaker did, and he's probably going to be back, is very, very genius method to get them to think bigger. Now, most people hear this right now and go, yeah, but that's not it. It's so much it that we don't realize it. We are the only thing holding us back. And he is in such high demand now. People are saying, hey, could you get him back for the mastermind? Because he changed the way that they think. And I know now in hindsight that if I just, for example, came out of the crash and thought bigger immediately, it's easier said than done. Yeah. That we could have grown this company. We're growing a lot faster, you know? And now for me to tell you, hey, 3 years, we're going to be a $20 million company, that's second nature for me now. But if you told me that 15 years ago, I'd think you were nuts. So as fast as we can get around people that can think bigger, that's going to propel our growth.
I love that. Do you think, for me, myself, being young, going through this, I'm trying to find out, because I'm training reps all the time, kind of a similar thing, but not to this level where I'm coaching for it. It's just my internal team that I'm working all the time.
Yeah.
What is it that gets me to think this way? What do I need to expose people to? What have you seen be successful in yourself or in your students to unlock people? How do we get them to think bigger and be like, because you guys teach an amazing system, no credit, no money, no whatever. It's really, for lack of it, all mental once the skills are learned.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Exposure, for sure, meaning who you intentionally get in front of. So I encourage people to come to our events. Why? Because there's some freaking big thinkers there and big speakers, and they got there for a reason. And if you hang out with them more intentionally, even though it might be uncomfortable, some of that's going to rub off whether you hire them or not. Some of that's going to rub off. So I think exposure is enormous. Again, more so than we ever could imagine.
I agree. I think too, even just, I know you guys run live events, and I've heard people I've paid to go to events and been in coaching programs. I think you actually mentioned this in your book. In 2015, you were still, building the business, but you were still spending like $25,000 a year on coaches or mentors or masterminds. I think a lot of people think, I think a lot of people think, oh man, like am I really going to get the return? But I think being in those rooms, sometimes you've seen their YouTube, you've seen their podcast, you've seen everything, but meeting people for real sometimes, at least for me, it humanizes the accomplishment, and it allows you to like, okay, I met this guy for real. Yeah, he's smart. Yeah, he's disciplined, but he's not like on some other planet from Mars that I can't get to.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So they come to our events. I'll say two things on that. Good point. They come to our events and they meet Kim and they meet the kids, they meet the grandkids, and they go, oh, okay, they're just normal. Yeah, that's what we've been screaming about. Secondly, Zach and I think it was before the last event, we sat down, we said, hey, let's just tally up like different relationships we've had, and then let's try to put a number to it. And we got up on stage and we gave some specific examples. It was like every contact or mastermind, it could have been right away, but it could have been 3 years later, led to like 250,000 to 2 million. But no question. There was one guy, you read the book, so let me say this. We call it the associate program now.
Yeah.
In the first edition of the book, it was called JV. I flew to see someone. I paid him $10,000. I flew to see someone, and I sat in his conference room. And on a break, he leaned back and he said, why don't you just joint venture with your students? And I said, oh, that's a good idea. That born the whole thing that you see the company's built on right now. So tell me, I couldn't put a number to that. He said it off the cuff in a 1-minute comment.
That's awesome.
Crazy.
And that was what you said you paid to go to that event, and it was like just being.
I paid to go see him personally. Yeah, I just called him and said, how much? I'm going to come out. He said, give me $10,000, come meet me for half a day. So just that little idea is not a little idea anymore.
Now it's brought a whole new level to your company. You guys are executing on that all the time.
Quite.
Huh?
Yeah. And I said quite. Yeah. And it's empowered lives. Every time we do a deal, think of this. Every time we do a deal, we're well over 1,000 with the students. 3 families are affected. The buyer who thought they couldn't buy, they were maybe in tears. The seller who thought, oh, the heck with this, the market just changed on me. And the investor. We just changed 3 lives generationally, because now they tell their kids, hey, don't worry about the bank. I'm being facetious, but in a sense, don't worry about that. You can do it this way. 3 lives. So 3,000 lives we've touched and growing. It's pretty neat.
That is incredible. And I think I love you guys in your book talk a lot about just, and I've met, your son-in-law as well, and you can feel you guys do things the right way, ethical. You talk about, hey, there's certain things that people could do legally, but we don't believe it's ethical. And I think that's something in business that I feel is really, really important. And when you meet your mentors, you meet the people you go into business with, there's what's legal, and then there's what's right. At least in my opinion. For you guys, when you're doing partnerships, you're taking the associates, how are you helping people ingrain, hey, we're here to go, we're here to make money, we're here to dominate as investors, but we're going to do it the right way?
You know what? It's not so much that we have to do something after they're in, Ty, because they have to apply. And unlike any other mentor, like people think I'm nuts with this, we say no to like 2 to 5, not a lot, but 2 to 5 people a year. But that's a lot financially that we give up. Why? Because it's going to be a headache if they don't align value-wise. Mm-hmm. And if we do a search and we find out some not so great stuff and there's not an answer for it, or they just are rubbing the team the wrong way, we just politely say, thanks, but no thanks. You're not a fit. Now, anybody can buy our course and go do deals. We can't stop that. Yeah. But what we can control is who comes into the Wicked Smart community. We are so protective. It's like we have a wall around it. And so once they're in, frankly, there's usually not a problem. Knock on wood. So, yeah, it's usually good once they break through they get in the wall,
Yeah, yeah. For you, obviously, running years and years of this, who have you seen, who's the right person for you guys? Who normally has the most success from what they're trying to do in their life or where they're currently at, or character traits? What would be the right person you say, hey, if we could find 10 more of these would be dominant associates for us?
Okay, we got like 10 things that are advertised and we're really dialed in on, but I'll give you a few that come to top of mind. Okay. One is what I said earlier. They came from the corporate world. They're pretty high income earners, but they're just done. Yeah. 2 is they were either in a family business or witnessed one and kind of was like always like, hey, I'd like to do that. We just tend to be family oriented. Mm-hmm. And 3 is, and this is why podcasts work so well, frankly, 3 is people that want to constantly learn. And we found that if someone's going to listen to your show, Ty, for, half hour at a time, each episode, whatever it is, they're usually someone that is just, tell me more. I want to learn more. Yeah. They're constantly improving. They're great because real estate, if you stack it and do it like that, like a podcast is consumed, you're going to crush it in real estate because the returns are so high once you get through the learning curve. So those are 3 things that we know absolutely dead certain are going to be winners for us. Of course, there's some lower level ones, but those are 3 top ones.
I like it. I love especially the continuous learning. I think in any business, any space, especially today, my space, whether it's real estate, it's marketing, sale, nothing stays the same, especially with how much tech is just creating so many new different things.
Yeah, crazy.
I think that's what's so cool about what you guys are doing. I've seen stuff like this. I've never seen a group have it so articulated so clearly for somebody that's never done a deal like this to go read a book, to go see how you guys are breaking it down. Even me, I've never done a deal on terms where I'm like, I feel like I could go give it a shot.
We got to help you do that.
I would love to. I definitely want to talk more about that. I do want to handle, I think there's a lot of people right now, most people, I think when they think of real estate investing, I want to make this distinction. I think you'd be obviously the best to clarify. Most people go into the flipping or like wholesaling. How does, your creative finance space and the 3 payday system, where does that kind of sit in against those?
Well, let me disclosure. On my show, we have a lot of flippers, a lot of wholesale. So I'm not poo-pooing any niche, right? I know them. Some of them have $20 million companies, so they know what they're doing. Here are a couple of things that would concern me, though, and why I like creative. One is, let's go wholesaling first. Mm-hmm. The myth out there is, well, I got to do that first. And then they realize they got to spend some money for mailings, and they realize the checks are really small if you get to one. And that's a job, frankly. You are on a treadmill when you're a solopreneur. Yeah. So I'm not talking about the person that successfully built a $20 million company. I've rubbed elbows with them. They're good. But they got a team.
I think that's a good point.
It's hard to get to that point.
I just want to – I know a lot of people hear wholesale, and there's all this marketing about wholesaling right now. But I know a lot of wholesalers, and the cuts actually when they're just flipping contracts is smaller than I think people think. And it's really a really crazy elite group that's doing what you're talking about, $20 million companies.
Yeah. There's a handful. We were invited to a private room, as long as I said, and there was like 6 wholesalers, and they brought us in to explain to them why creative financing. And that's how I knew there's some big ones. I never knew they were that big. The other thing is it's one check, right? It might be small, but it's one. You got to go do it again. So I never thought I'd say this, but after being a broker owner and realtor for 18 of the first 18 years, you frankly might as well be a realtor. You might make more money because you can do the same thing. You're going to spin wheels and do it again and again and again. So unfortunately, that's the deal. And wholesaling is limited and starting to require licensing anyway. So I'm not saying go that route. I'm saying you'd be better served. Secondly is the flipping. Since HGTV, in other things, everyone's a flipper. I was this morning, Ty, I was getting a vitamin drip, right? And the lady says, yeah, I bought a home. She was bummed totally, said I bought a home from a flipper, and she told me all the things wrong. But it sounds like someone just got out of a seminar and tried to do this house, and what a mess they made. So there's just too much competition. The risk now is high. The margins are tiny. I've done hundreds of homes, new construction. It's nice to have the skill set. My wife has always got one or so under construction because she likes doing it. Our own home is right now, but not as a full-fledged business. So in my opinion, the creative real estate allows two things. One, to literally operate in every market, because I said earlier, one constant is it's changing always. Well, you know what's happening to the wholesalers right now? This is a bummer for them. The method of tying up a property and selling it to like the iBuyers, the big buyers, that was going on during this craze. They stopped buying at inflated prices because the market's changing. So now they have to change their whole model, and a lot of them coming this way. And the second, so you can pivot good. And the second thing is the 3 payday thing that you and I keep alluding to. Why on earth would you do 1 payday when you can do 3? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, when I was going through the 3 payday system, it felt like it had all of the pros. You know, the wholesale, right? It's the quick check with obviously, you know, for most of them, if you're not running a ton of marketing, the idea of being able to flip the transaction, create the spread without a ton of your own money. I think what's so cool is you guys capture the first payday and the down payment from a qualified buyer, solving a problem for a seller that doesn't have the solution that they need or to be able to get the home sold. But then you talk about it, build wealth, where a lot of people, right? I want to buy this because I want to keep the asset for a while. I want to rent it out. I want to create some cash flow along the way. I think that's what's so crazy about your guys' system, being able to, one, get some money on the first payday, but then in the principal pay down only, you guys are putting a buyer in. You're a lot of times creating a spread where you're paying off the seller's mortgage, but you guys get to keep the middle. And it's almost like owning a rental property, but you're not the landlord. I think that's something that a lot of people would have questions about that I actually have some questions on too. How is it structured where you guys can hold the property, put them in, but everything is the responsibility of the tenant buyer?
Yep. So the conversation with the buyer is this. The buyer agreement says it too, of course, legally. Yeah. But the conversation is this. Ty is our buyer, and Ty's sitting down to sign his paperwork, and he's excited. Our conversation goes along the lines of, hey, Ty, congrats. You're a buyer now. You own this home. The only difference is you don't have title yet, and unfortunately, you're not qualified for a mortgage yet. But you are going to behave like, pay for like, maintain like, capture equity or lose equity like a buyer would. If you close on a home today with a bank and the market goes down, what do? It's your home. You sit it out. You wait it out. Yep. Well, it's no different here. You're in a rent to own. You get to capture all that. Your price is locked in, but you don't have your loan yet. And so you're not calling me when the toilet clogs and the roof leaks. It's yours. And it's specifically stated in the agreement. Now, let me tell you this. If an investor goofs and makes a poor decision and puts a renter in there that shouldn't have really been a rent-to-own buyer, and that renter, you didn't take enough deposit, or there's all kinds of reasons. We've made all the mistakes. And that renter stops paying rent because they truly are a renter. They don't want to buy it. And then you end up going to court. Technically, tenant law would override that, and you'd be stuck with the repair. But when does that happen? That only happens when you screw up and you put someone in there that shouldn't be in there. And on top of that, you screwed up and they stop paying. So the odds are like we might have one of those a year type thing. But I just want to be full disclosure. That's what would technically happen if they knew what they were doing. And some of these tenants do know what they were doing. They're professional tenants. If you do the right thing, though, and you follow our system, it's 2 to 5% default rate. That's super good. Like, that's probably better than government loans, because life events happen. You can't help it.
Yeah. I think that is, to me, that's just, I think when people hear this who have never been introduced to this, it's like mind blowing to be able to control the asset, get a payday, but also create a spread, have cash flow. And then payday number 3 is essentially just the official sale of the asset through to the buyer, right?
Yeah, because you've got the markup. Even if you didn't mark it up, you've got all of the principal pay down that accumulated, like in that oceanfront home, like we talked about, 30,000 a year accumulated. I think we took whatever it was, 30 months to do it, but that all is free money for you because the tenant buyer is paying the payment. You're making a spread on it already, and you're getting all the principal pay down when you cash that out.
That's so cool. And I think so many people, I have so many buddies, and I did the single family rental before I got into more multifamily and some commercial stuff. And it's the tenant thing is tough. I think a lot of people, it's passive income, whatever. But if you don't know what you're doing and you go try to manage stuff, it's crazy. You get the wrong tenants, you don't know how to screen. And what you guys teach, it seems obviously with the team, how to vet the right, like you said, buyers is a super important piece, that you really can create a more passive investment as you execute correctly. Would that be correct?
Well, two things I'll say about that. We can do a more advanced strategy, which I'll talk about. But the first thing is, do you know how many properties, like just do the math, you got to accumulate with buy and hold to say, I want to get 20,000 a month passive income? It's a lot of properties. So we can get to this so much faster without the headaches and without the bank loans and all the crap. And then what we do, Ty, is let's say, I'll use Brian in Chicago again. He's just awesome. And he did his first 8 deals lease purchase. And then the light bulb went on, which it usually does. And they realized, I should have bought it. I should have done sub 2 or owner financing because it's better to own it than control it, even though it's easy when you're new. So then we went to his portfolio. I call it wealth stacking. And I said, Brian, let's look at your portfolio. We did it live at an event. We took 3 out of the 8. We looked at the terms he has with the seller, and we went back and renegotiated and bought the property sub 2, subject to the existing loan. Now that home that was only a 3 or 4 year deal just became a 20-year deal if he wants to keep it that long.
Wow.
There's all kinds of things you can do. The deal's never over. Creative real estate is such that it can keep evolving, and that's why I call it wealth stacking. You control it. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could pick your brain for hours, but I know we don't have hours. I love this stuff. I think it's so fascinating. That's why I've loved going through your book so much, because you guys put in breakdowns of the deals, and it feels doable. It feels legit. I've obviously, most of my real estate, for any of my listeners, I've done more conventional investing where there's been big down payments. Luckily, I have a different business that allowed me to do that. But I think what's so cool about this is some of the returns you guys are creating with no money. It seems like cheating.
It's out of thin air, I say sometimes, but that sounds too easy.
Yeah. But it in a way is, right. And I think it's helped me even to another degree. I feel like every stage of my entrepreneurial journey and my business career, I'm learning more and more things. You learn how to work hard, then you learn how to, optimize and systematize and do these things. And now I've developed a phrase, and I don't know what you think of this, but money follows value. And what you guys are doing in the 3Pay, you're creating a ton of value, not necessarily by plugging in money, but the money follows all of the systems that you create in the 3Payday systems to find a buyer who has an issue, can't get it. You're brokering people that need solutions.
I absolutely love the phrase, to answer your question. Money follows value directly. And so when you look at what we've got, back to what we originally started with, when you know the demand for someone to be their guide by buyers and sellers is huge right now, you can create more value, but you got to get in front of it, right? You got to take action. I've been screaming, Ty, that based on that statement, create value, because of the demand right now. If you sprint, and I'm not saying this is easy, if you are laser focused and sprint and you're serious and committed, I think you can do a 9 to 24 month sprint and create a decade of income.
Wow.
Based on what I've done over the last decade. And they can do it 9 to 24 months. If you're serious, it's not like everybody's going to do it. I'm just saying, if you're serious, you can do it.
That's incredible. Just with the opportunity that you're seeing coming up with the way everything is, if people dialed into this niche, learned it, took the skills and went, they could go from what you guys have done in the past, go create 10 years of income.
Yep. And that's sweet to see that in a spreadsheet and say, okay, I could take 6 months off now, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I love it. Well, so much good stuff, guys. For everybody listening, obviously we've shot the dart across a couple different topics. And if you're somebody that's listening, I know I've done this 100 times on podcasts that I've been listening to, or books I've been reading where stuff just goes whoosh, right over my head. the thing we always encourage everybody to do, research. Go get these books that we'll put some links into. Go get on YouTube. Go study some of this stuff. It's so much simpler than you think. If you heard a vocabulary word you never heard to, subject to, or owner financing, any of that stuff just feels like completely out of place to you. Go do some research. It's going to benefit you so much. And the more you familiarize yourself with this stuff, the more conversations you have about money, the better you're going to be in the game. Just in closing, Chris, we kind of ask everybody, came up with a new funny question. It's just from polar opposites. From Grant Cardone to Dave Ramsey, where do you put yourself in the spectrum of your money strategy?
I don't put it on that spectrum. It's just because it's a different world. It's its own spectrum. This is my answer. It's just its own spectrum. It doesn't compare.
Fair. Last question before we wrap up. Everybody on here is trying to develop their financial literacy. They're trying to do the right stuff. We're trying to help people get in the right circles, get the right conversations, do whatever it takes, because I just truly believe, and I think you're probably in the same boat, stuff's getting more expensive. Life's getting harder. It's getting more complex. If you're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year and you have a family, it's going to be really difficult. So kind of finish this phrase however you would. I know it could be a ton of things. It can be a parrot, whatever. You can dominate the money game if
you get around people that have dominated the money game. Just get in front, get around them.
Drop the mic. I love it. I love it, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you on. Where's the best place for everybody to follow you? We'll post all the links, but where is the best place that people can continue to learn from you, get your content, get your material?
If they don't mind listening to me for 55 more minutes, go to smartrealestatecoach.com/masters class. It's free. It'll piece together what Ty and I just spoke about. And then you're going to post the wickedsmartbooks.com/money game. And that'll give them the free books. And it's not free books, but by the way, put a credit card in for shipping. It's free. We'll send it out. We sent out a bunch already to your tribe. I can't wait to send out more.
And then you also have a podcast with over 300 episodes. I've listened to some of that. There's some amazing stuff on there where you guys are breaking down deals. What's that?
smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com.
Perfect. We appreciate it, Chris. For everybody listening, go follow him. Go look at this stuff. It's amazing stuff. I've learned a ton, and I've been studying real estate, not in this faculty, for a long time. Really, really impressive. Glad to get to have you on. We appreciate you, Chris. We'll catch you next time on The Money Game.
Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media.
Real money. Real money? Money is the answer.
Y'all be cool. And we'll see you next time on The Money Game.
Money. Yes!